Welcome to Talk Ottumwa, a production of Greater Ottumwa Partners in Progress. On this podcast, we'll talk about the local businesses in Ottumwa to give you the backstory to their success. We'll also talk about the economic initiatives that are driving the progress of the community, and we'll talk about the issues that the community faces and much more. So stick around and let's talk Ottumwa. Welcome to Talk Ottumwa, everyone, and today is a nice sunny day, good spring day here in Ottumwa and Wapello County, and I think that we have the perfect guest in here for this topic. He owns a construction company. He owns Hopkins Properties. He owns Pizza Ranch. You might want to get your pen and paper handy because there's a long list here. His family owns Mustard Seed Company, and we have Curt Hopkins in the studio with us today. Good afternoon, Curt.
Good afternoon.
That's quite the laundry list you have there.
Yeah, we're not bored at my house. We got plenty going on, and the phone rings quite a bit.
Yeah. So the reason we have you in here today, obviously, is economic development is a huge topic in the city of Ottumwa and the Ottumwa region, and you've made the news as of late for starting a strip center out by the Coles property here in Ottumwa. Tell us a little bit about how you got started, because this is a really long list of things that you have going on here in town.
Yeah, so I'll kind of go a little bit back, just kind of give you my backstory real quick about how things came about. So as a young person, I watched my parents fix houses up and kind of move up in houses. And then my dad was one of those that, somehow my sister got out of it, but I ended up having to help a lot on the weekends. And so, I learned how to do drywall and I learned how to do home improvement and some of those things. And at the time I was kind of like, oh, great, my friends are out doing their thing and I've got to help my dad this weekend. But I learned a ton from it at that point in time, and I don't think I really realized the tools that I was putting in my toolkit at that point in time in my life. And so learned a lot of those skills, and then I bought my first house when I was 20. Had a sports car, loved the sports car, but my parents said, you might want to think about moving out of the house. And so I sold the Corvette and bought a house, and it was a total dump, and fixed it up and paid $39,000 for it and sold it for $98,500 a couple years later, and realized that real estate's kind of one of those things I like. So we sold that one, bought another house for $80,000, ended up building equity into it to $164,000. Bought a house, my first house, out of a sheriff's auction. And this is while I was holding a full-time job down at Pella Windows at the same time. So my wife and I fixed the house up and turned around, and we sold that as our first flip. Bought a rental property or two, and then I kind of cooled my jets on it. Started having children and was working 50, 60 hours a week. I was in management with Pella, driving back and forth to Ottumwa. And just decided that I needed to slow down a little bit on that. I had a good job and kind of settled in a little bit into the family life and started having kids. So that kind of stopped my real estate growth at that point in time. So I didn't do much at that point after that. And you fast forward about 8 years with Pella Windows. I was a department manager there, learned a ton from them. A lot about human resources, a lot about growing a team, a lot about having the right people underneath you and making things happen with a staff. And so that taught me a ton. But I always had this yearning for something else in life. Like I felt like there was something else I should be doing. It wasn't that that's a bad job or a bad place to work, but it was just always had a little bit of an entrepreneurial bug in me a little bit. And as a kid, honestly, I heard a lot about Ivan Tennyson. He was a big Ottumwa component here, and always, heard about Ivan and having an airplane and sports cars, and just he had a pretty cool lifestyle, and he owned a lot of restaurants. So I thought, well, man, this guy's got it figured out. And later on, I realized he owned a lot of other things besides restaurants. But, as a young person, I kind of thought, well, the restaurant industry interests me a little bit, and so I started looking at different concepts and started digging into that a little bit. And at the time I was late 20s and thought, if I'm going to risk things now, I can recover if something were to fail. I'm still young enough. If I scrape my knees, I can still get back up. So I chose to liquidate some retirement, and I chose to leverage my home equity that I had in my house, and I put it all on the line and started looking for restaurant concepts, and went to Quiznos and visited a few other places and looked at different things. And there was a pizza ranch in Pella, and the owner was always in the foyer selling pizza and chicken in the foyer at break. And so I started talking to him one day, and he said, you got to look at Pizza Ranch. So started looking at it a little bit, and really liked the concept. Felt like it was it was an Iowa company. Loved the fact that it was in Iowa. That was where the headquarters were. It's a faith-based company, which resonated with me and my wife, and so that aligned with us. Was another big piece of the puzzle for me. The other thing was the territories around me were not taken yet, so a lot of components lined up for me. It was one financially that I could afford at the time, and so we took a stab at it, and we met with Pizza Ranch, and they liked us as a franchisee. Ended up signing up to do 3 stores at that point. Now,
to that point, had you ever had restaurant experience?
Yeah. So when I was younger, I worked at a grocery store at Easter's back in the day when it was Easter's and Econo Foods. Spent a lot of time there, but then I also picked a second part-time job up at Burger King. And so I was closing at night at Burger King, opening, and then going to college at the same time, and just trying to manage all that at the same time. But I picked up a lot of restaurant experience there. Randy Bradley was a local Ottumwa guy that owned Burger King for several years. And so, yeah, that was where I kind of got my restaurant background, got a flavor for it there. So understood franchises, how the concept worked at that point in time. And so that's kind of why it sparked some of the interest as well. But yeah, that was all the restaurant experience I had. I probably had about 2 years worth of restaurant experience at that point in my life. Yeah. So we met with Pizza Ranch, tried to find a territory. I wanted to be in Ottumwa because I'm an Ottumwa guy. Grew up in Ottumwa, lived here for 40 years. My wife was raised here as well, our families. So I wanted to be in Ottumwa, but we couldn't find a location in Ottumwa. So ended up opening a store in Fairfield, Iowa in 2006. That was our first store. Started out well there. Then 2008 hit, and right around the time of the economy spiral, they were tearing up the highway, the main drag. They put the bypass around Fairfield, and then they tore the main drag up going through town. So right in front of my restaurant, the street was torn up at the same time. So I had the perfect storm going. And at that point in my life, I'm thinking, okay, I've got 2 little kids at home. My sales were hemorrhaging a little bit because of all that was going on, and I'm the guy now that's cleaning the bathroom, that's vacuuming the floor, that's wiping the tables down, that's closing the restaurant, opening the restaurant, trying to make the thing make money. And that was really, I learned a ton during that time in my life of, this is how you got to really squeeze to make profits work in the restaurant business. The restaurant business is a tough business. If you can run 10% of your gross sales to the bottom line, you're doing a great job. It's really tight. The margins are tough. So that was a great lesson, I think, for me. So 2008, we got through that. 2010, we struck back. We were third in our division for sales increases in 2010. We got an award for it that year, so we came back with a vengeance. Felt like we were doing really well, so we thought, okay, we're going to keep looking for another store. So wanted to be in Ottumwa, obviously, so that's how we ended up out on Venture Drive with the new building out there. At that point in time, didn't have the cash to do the real estate. Had a local person here that built the building for us, and we ended up having an option to purchase. So we opened the store 2012, February 2012, came out of the gate. We were the highest sales dollar store they had at the time. We did $100,000 the first week we were open. So Ottumwa, yeah, it was. Ottumwa was awesome. They welcomed us, supported us, always have. So I mean, it was just like a fairy tale for me, to be honest. It was just, I worked a ton. My grandpa died, and we had a baby the same week we opened the restaurant, and so I had a lot going on in my life.
A little.
Yeah. So I didn't see that, the child that was born the week we opened the restaurant, I felt like I didn't see her for the first 90 days because I was working bell to bell. And so It took, 90 to 120 days to stabilize the restaurant and get it under control. It was just crazy every single day of the week. Sales were off the chart. You hear that a lot about, restaurants in Ottumwa when they open. They're well supported, and town's always been very good to take care of us as business owners. So yeah, we opened the second store there in Ottumwa, and then felt like things were great. Wanted to expand. We opened another store in 2014 in Illinois, Bloomington, Illinois. And then shortly after, I took a business partner on, and we opened a store in Springfield, Illinois in 2015. 2016, we opened a store in Galesburg, and then we bought Waukee, Altoona, and Urbandale and Des Moines all at the same time within the 2 weeks of each other. So large expansion, a lot of growth happened. I was all in on the restaurant business at that point in time in my life. That's all I did.
It sounds like you made a pretty good business model. You were able to expand pretty well. What made you deviate away from that path and go into the property management, the property development, the construction phase again?
Yeah, so at one point in time in 2016, there was a little bit of a situation where we had a little bit of a scare with some sales. The restaurant, Pizza Ranch chain, had a little moment there, and the sales were dropping a little bit for a period of time. And I kind of took a quick look in the mirror and realized that I had $10 million invested in just restaurants, and all my eggs were in one basket. And at that point in time, we had 4 children. My farthest away restaurant was 4.5 hours away, and I just thought, man, I don't know about this. We had 450 employees working for us. It was a crazy time in my life, and I just thought, I need to look at doing maybe something different and maybe get a little closer to home. So I approached my partner, asked him if he wanted to buy some of my portion out. We owned some of the real estate together as well, and started to exit stage right and just get closer to home. And during the process, kind of how the properties pieces came in, we were part of building a lot of those buildings ourselves. We didn't build them, but we negotiated leases. We dealt with general contractors. I gained an understanding of how to deal with the city through processes, architects, all those kinds of things when you're doing a project. I learned that through opening these restaurants, and that was kind of how I got my lesson on how to do those things. So, in about a 2-year period, we went from all those restaurants back down to just Ottumwa. Sold them all, sold the real estate, collected cash, and got back down to just the Ottumwa store, back to my roots of where I grew up, and knew the clientele and loved the restaurant here. And then during that time, we took some of the proceeds back from that and started getting into, we did multifamily apartments. That's where the climate-controlled storage units came into play. We rented some of those when we built our house and realized that the market didn't have a whole lot of those here, and thought, we need to bring some of those to Ottumwa. So find a need, fill a need. It's a typical entrepreneur, and I do that a lot when I'm out and about. But I look at things that are maybe happening elsewhere that we don't have and try to bring something here like that. So spun off the first climate-controlled storage unit facility in 2016. A little bit unsure how that's going to go, and the thing filled up in less than 6 months. So Ottumwa, again, received it well, went well for us. At that point in time, I'm managing a restaurant. I'm managing, we opened a second storage facility. I'm managing 100 units of storage, and also trying to manage a 24-unit apartment complex at the same time, as well as raising 4 children. So it was a lot for me, and I think I kind of got myself a little over capacity. I learned a little lesson there too. And so, since then we did a few flip houses, and along that way I started to bring on some construction help. Started with 2 guys with us, and then we expanded. We got all the way up to about 11 guys, and now we're back down to about 7, which is a good number for me, I think. And the advantage to doing some of that was we could do our own builds, control the schedule, control the costs better, and just, control the staffing a little bit better, just doing things internally. And so that's why we created the construction company. So they all kind of just started to work together. and have found some synergies there. So
what you're basically saying is you have a little bit of free time on your hand, so you can start some new business ventures here coming up. One of those is something that I know you had made a presentation to the Ottumwa City Council not too long ago, which is building a strip mall here in town, out by the Kohl's building. Can you give us a little bit of a sense of why you felt that need? Because there were a lot of people, when you get on social media, they the common thread seemed to be, we already have enough empty storefronts in town. Why do we need to do something brand new? So what was it that you found was the need for that particular building in that particular location?
So we bought that piece of ground in 2016, and we felt like it was a great location. It's, in a great retail trade corridor and great traffic, and just really was looking for the right time to do it and find the right concepts to go in there, and really was just struggling with it, to be honest, finding the right moment, and started to search for some different concepts that maybe have interest. We approached a number of different places, and then we got approached by Maurice's and said, hey, if you would be interested in doing a build, we'd be interested in moving out of the mall. And so, I have mixed emotions about doing that. I don't like taking things out of other places, but I also know that how business works, and if they're looking to move themselves, there's got to be a reason why. And so we were able to strike a lease with them first, and then we hired a broker that they go out and reach national accounts. We hired a broker to help us bring in other concepts to fill the space, and found a couple other medical users that are going to be good users for the space. And so as a real estate developer, and the bank likes this too, if you can find tenants before you go stick your neck out and spend that kind of money, you're at least you're going to be able to pay the payment on the thing. Sure. It's a little dangerous to go build a $2.5 million building and just hope that somebody's going to come and fill it. And I'm not that big of a risk taker, so I kind of wanted to have a little bit of comfort in knowing I had somebody. So the timing just happened to be right with them, and things started falling into place with some other tenants. We've still got 2,400 square feet available that we're trying to fill, that we're looking for some things to complement Ottumwa. I'd love to bring, potentially another restaurant or another service to town, is something maybe that we don't have, that would just continue to improve the community. That's my goal. So, and back to the comment of, we already have enough spaces here and that are empty and those kinds of things. And I've kind of had some people say, well, you're taking things out of the mall. But the thing about it is when you're dealing with national accounts, they have specific places. I mean, they will look at it at a town and say, this corner 2 blocks away will give us this many sales dollars, and then they'll look at another corner and they'll pinpoint that spot and location. And they have algorithms that will tell them, with this traffic, this is what we will get. And so there's a lot of science behind some of that I think people don't realize of, when they go to look, they're spending a lot of dollars to get here. The leases are not cheap, and they want to make sure they're going to be able to perform. And so they put a lot of science to those things. They look at, is it a stoplight? Is it on a hard corner? What's the egress like? What's the frontage like? What's the visibility? All those things play into factors. So the empty buildings that we have, for some reason, isn't playing into what their needs are. They've either looked at those, or there's a reason why they're bypassing those. And so, and then the other piece of it is this is a new building. When you look at a new strip center being built in Ottumwa, it's been a lot of time here since something like that's happened. The newest one, I think, is out across from Menards. It's been years ago. And something new with some new architectural features to it, I think, will be good for the town and good scenery for us. So also Kohl's, being one of the main department stores here, as a driver next door to us, I think also plays a factor. I mean, they look at foot traffic and those kinds of things. So all that takes place when they start looking at locations.
That really brings up a good point, because, one of the things that is really important in this community is not only development of space, but obviously retail attraction. We've been hearing for years, we need this store, we need that store. But one of the things that plays into that is having the developer that's going to come here and build the property to suit for those people to actually get them here. And I think that that's the piece that people sometimes miss is, we can say we want target all day long, but unless we have the market availability for them, unless we have the building footprint for them and then the building for them, it's going to be really hard to attract them. So in certain ways, developers such as yourself really become an economic development tool for the community, in the fact that you're building what those retailers are going to want to actually come to the community.
Absolutely. I mean, so there's ability out there now to where they can look and see what's the retail trade area look like, what kind of dollars are coming in, and then they can actually drill down and look and say, okay, a female from 30 to 40 is spending these dollars on red wine in Ottumwa, Iowa. I mean, they can drill into all that detail and understand what's being spent. So there's a lot of science and things that they can use right now to understand the market, and I think that plays a factor in whether they're looking at Ottumwa. So that's a piece of it. The other piece of it is, I think an advantage that I have is I can say, I own this business here and I'm doing these sales. It's 2 blocks from you, and so you may see numbers that Ottumwa is saying it has, or may see the trade area dollars, but I'm telling you, this is what I'm able to do here for sales. So I can maybe sell them on the market a little bit better than maybe some people can, because I've got experience and I got proof. Because sometimes the tough part about Ottumwa, and we've talked about this a little bit, is it's not quite big enough to bring some of the bigger concepts. It's too big for some of the other things, and we're just kind of in a weird spot.
Yeah, we qualify as that ugly micropolitan term. We're above 15,000, under 100,000. So we're in a really ugly position as far as population goes, for getting help anyway.
Yeah, we're in a tough spot there. When you look at and I know I've read on Facebook the Olive Gardens, the Texas Roadhouse, all that kind of stuff that people want to see. That's a 50,000 and higher population typically, that they're going to want to see that. So we're just not quite big enough. So we've got to continue to spin off stuff and create jobs and things that are going to bring more people to the area to try to grow our population and make it more of a draw. And I think that's where we're at right now. And I'm excited because I think, we've got the city council on the move. We've got economic development, the GoPip folks. Obviously, you guys are doing a great job. And we're just trying to, there's some momentum with us right now of trying to attract some of that. You got some great business owners in town that are middle-aged folks that, they're making a hard run at some stuff. They're expanding their businesses. They're pouring money into the community. And that's the kind of stuff that it's going to take to attract more population to move here, more industry, and those kinds of things.
Yeah. Well, and another thing, obviously, housing is one of the issues that we struggle with in this community. We did a podcast a couple of weeks ago specifically revolving around the housing situation that we have in Ottumwa, which really brings me back to another question. You had mentioned right at the beginning of this podcast that you really kind of started in residential development. What made you flip the switch to go from residential to business development, and do you have future plans to go back into that residential component?
So a lot of guys you'll see that are in commercial actually started in residential. There's a little bit of a fear factor. So it's a little less scary to buy a $50,000 rental property and cut your teeth on that than it is to go spend $3 million on a strip center. It's just a different fear factor, and I think a lot of guys like me or that I've listened to on other podcasts, they wade into things. So they start in residential single-family homes, and then they end up in multifamily apartment complexes, and then they get large with that, and then they end up going into retail, commercial spaces, a lot of different things in commercial usually. And that's kind of how the story goes with a lot of us, to be honest. And then it's hard to understand sometimes how to get into commercial. There's a fear factor. I know I have a lot of friends that are in residential stuff and they're afraid of commercial. They're like, I don't know why you do that. Well, I love commercial because they're triple net leases. And for folks that don't understand a triple net lease is, let's say, for example, Hy-Vee, they will pay my taxes, my insurance, and they'll pay the base rent. And then, so I don't have to pay any of that as the developer. That's a pass-through cost to them in a triple net. and then they pay a CAM fee. And the CAM fee is a common area maintenance fee. And so they will pay for snow removal, lawn clipping, all those kinds of things. So as an owner, as long as your shell's in good shape and your parking lot's in good shape, there's not a lot of responsibility. And then the ACH, they're run into your account every month. So I personally love those. A lot of guys like those because they're less maintenance. You go back to the residential stuff like we're talking about earlier, and you're going to get a phone call from John wanting his toilet fixed, or you're going to have a leaky faucet, or the washer dryer goes down. And so there's a lot of that stuff. Whereas with the bigger assets like that, it's pretty straightforward. The great part about dealing with national account folks too is, they know what they want. They bring you a blueprint. They know the parameters. They know what they can spend. They know what their budget is. And it's a pretty straightforward deal. There's a lot less muddiness to the deal. There's good and bad to that, though. They throw you around the room a little bit because they know they can, because they're a grade A tenant and they can kind of demand things. So there's a little bit of a fine line to walk there. But at the end of the day, I really love commercial stuff. It's really become a passion for me. I've enjoyed it. And, a big part of why I'm able to do what I'm doing now is because of the people that work for me too. We've got a great system in place. We've got an admin staff that takes care of a lot of our bills. We've got a good accountant. We've got, my construction guys a lot of them are in their 50s from the Grooms construction era that have come to work for us. They're great people that show up to work every day. We've got a great storage unit manager. She's very responsible. So as I sit here and talk about all these things, people are like, how do you do all this? It's because of the people that work for me a lot of times.
Yep, that's always the common element, having great employees.
Yep.
What does the future look like for you, for Curt Hopkins, the enterprise? What are your plans for the future to grow even bigger?
I really am kind of intrigued by the strip center model. I really like it. I like the national account pieces. I would probably look at maybe some other markets in Iowa that we could maybe go do that in. Some of the concepts that you join up with, they'll say, hey, we love Ottumwa, we're coming here. We also like Fort Dodge, or we also like Muscatine or Burlington. And so then you get in the car and you start driving the trade area and start looking for land to buy, and then you pitch them the land and see if you can strike a deal, and that's kind of how it works. So I see probably myself expanding more with triple net projects, maybe looking into some residential rental stuff again. That's more of a multifamily type thing. My kids are getting old enough now that my oldest is starting to show some interest in real estate, and she's getting a real estate license. I don't know where we'll end up with her and how deep she gets into it, but, I'm looking forward to seeing kind of where she goes. So sometimes I think I'm going to slow down and kind of pump the brakes, and other times I think, I'm 48, still got some time left to run hard here, and plan on doing it for another 10 or 15 years.
So what's along that lines, you're obviously a fairly big player here in this area. What does economic development look like to you in the city of Ottumwa in the next, say, 5 years?
A couple thoughts I have there. I think Ottumwa is starting to change some philosophy from what I've seen. There's been some opportunity for some TIF agreements, some development agreements with the city. And I know there's mixed emotions on how those work. And I think that the key piece for that is, for the folks out there that maybe don't understand that, is, the city's going to give a little bit of a tax break in the period of time. So they may say for 10 years, we're going to charge you 80%, 60%, 70%. It's going to be on a scale. Well, the city's not necessarily giving me that money. It's money that I'm still paying taxes. They're just giving me a little bit of a break so I can stabilize the property. And then at the end, they know that they're going to charge me a tax rate that's going to be a good sized tax rate. And that's being done in a lot of towns. So I think Ottumwa's learning that that's a key piece of the puzzle for growth. And I know it's scary to do those things, but a lot of the communities around us that are growing are doing those things for developers. And a developer, when they're coming to a town, is looking for those opportunities because it's getting harder to do these things. Construction costs and all those things are getting more difficult. So as I look at Ottumwa, I'm excited because I feel like we're starting to see that that's what it's going to take. I think the community understanding that a little bit more about how that works. It's not the city handing us money. It's just giving us a break so we can get it stabilized. So I see the city reaching across the aisle to help with that, and I think it's great. I've also the city has put together some facade grants in the past. When we did some stuff on Church Street, we got a couple buildings on Church Street, and they had a facade program, and that was huge help. I mean, those things are a big deal when you're taking an old building, you're trying to reface that building and put cash into that, and to be honest with you, that grant money will a lot of times make the decision on whether I'll do the project or not. You need help getting it done, because you can only charge so much rent. You can only squeeze it so hard, and so if you got a little bit of extra help, that sometimes makes enough room for things to happen. So the city has done a nice job of doing that, revitalizing the main street and revitalizing Church Street, putting stuff out there for business owners to take advantage of. So I applaud that. I think more of that in our life is what it's going to take to continue to turn the community and give it a little bit of a lipstick. And just new projects coming here. It's, being open-minded, trying to come together as a group. It takes a team, it takes a city, it takes the developer to come together to make a deal work. And without that, I'll be honest, you just can't get a lot of things off the ground without that help.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's just getting harder to do. So,
and I think that as a community, we've seen over the last 30 or 40 years what happens when you can't get people around the table and get consensus to what needs to be done. We start having buildings shell out, and we start seeing a population decline. We start seeing home values decrease. So having everybody together working towards a common goal and being a little bit progressive is really important, especially right now, because we are on the precipice of doing some really great things as a community.
You got a lot of nice stuff in the hopper that's coming down the pipe, and I'm excited about it. I think we're turning the corner right now, and we got the right people in a lot of the right places. But you're right, for years there were some naysayers, and there's still some naysayers out there that have been here for years, and there are always going to be naysayers, unfortunately. And there's a lot of us that are cheerleaders for Ottumwa. We want to see things happen. We want to see new stuff come here, and trust me, when these brands come here and they look at Ottumwa, they're going to drive the market. They're going to look at the residential areas. They're going to look at every corridor coming into town. What's it look like? Is it dirty? Is it clean? What is the town doing right now to improve those things? So you're competing with other towns around you to get these brands to come here. So if they're making a decision between us and Burlington, Iowa, or us in Kirksville, all those components are playing a factor on whether they're going to bring their business to Ottumwa, Iowa. That's why it's so important to show these are the things we have going on. It's got to be a little bit of a show pony for you to be able to display those things to these new brands. And so, I'm excited. A lot of new development here that hasn't happened in years. And we got a lot of great people that are heading in the same direction.
Thanks for coming in today, Curt. I really appreciate your time, and I'm really excited for all the projects that you have going on, and I'm sure that a lot of people are going to be excited when they can walk through the doors of some of your places and do some shopping.
Yeah, looking forward to it. We're excited about it, and thankful to be here in Ottumwa with a great community that supports us.
All right. Well, thanks for listening to Talk Ottumwa, everyone, and we'll see you next time.